Ladies and gentlemen, today we delve into NIO, Tesla, and Nvidia, alongside other market influencers. Tomorrow's CPI release holds the key to NIO's trajectory, contingent on CPI outcome. Stay tuned for market trends and the forthcoming CPI report's impact. I'm also going to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, and Nvidia, and a couple of other tickers. White tomorrow is going to be a very important state as we have CPI coming out and how CPI may affect NIO based off the current trend. But before breaking things anyways, let's break down what's going on with the overall market. So when it comes to NIO, this thing was up 2.32% for the day, holding up quite decently. But the real question is, how on earth will this thing move, and will this thing continue to push up? The answer is, guys, I can't really give you guys anything too precise because it all depends on CPI. I can't make any promises about what NIO is going to do. I do want to note that looking at Tesla and Apple, we are looking a little bit more bearish from a technical standpoint. But technicals are only parts of the picture because what matters more is going to be what happens with CPI. So now let's talk about how today went in CPI before break down anything about NIO and the charts. Now when it comes to Apple, they had their big events today. Apple ended up sinking despite some pretty good news that came out, at least overall. Looking at their new technologies, they looked very, very awesome. The iPhone 15 has these new features, which are very cool. The new Apple Watches were announced, and they have very powerful GPUs, not to mention other functionalities, which I thought was very, very awesome. So this was great for them. But the share price still dropped nonetheless, which is what tends to happen after events like this. And that doesn't guarantee anything, even though Apple's looking kind of weak. We will see what happens tomorrow. Now for the whole market, including NIO, we have CPI coming out tomorrow 1 hour before the market opens. There are two numbers you need to be watching for the most, and that's going to be the inflation rate year over year. We're expecting it to be between 3.5 to 3.6%. Then we also have core inflation year over year, which is expected to be between 4.3 to 4.4%. So what does this mean? We basically want to be around 3.6% or lower, less than that. And that is going to be good for the markets. If it's 3.7% or higher, this is the overall CPI that I'm referring to, that is going to be bad for the markets if it's 3.7% or higher tomorrow. Make sure you are prepared, and remember to keep an eye on this 1 hour before the market opens for core, which is also coming out. At the same time, you want this to be 4.4% or less. If it's 4.5% or higher, that's going to be bearish for the stock market. Okay, so I hope that's as clear as possible. CPI is going to play a very big role in what happens to the market for tomorrow. Looking at the current trends, you must have noticed that the blue line on the chart indicates a slight increase in CPI in July. So for this next report that's coming out for the month of August, we're going to find out if this is going to continue to go up or not. We're expecting this to continue to go up, but the question is to what extent. We're also expecting core to continue to decline, and we'll see if that happens. That's going to dictate how the whole market moves. The data we have is suggesting that CPI is going to continue to drop, but because of energy prices, the overall CPI could end up going up. But the other factors, like looking at core, that is what could be going down. That's what I meant to say in the beginning. As of right now, let's just talk about what we saw on it yesterday. I mean, there's a reason why people call it the CPI, because it's very easy for these numbers to be manipulated. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with the report when it comes to NIO. There was a lot of talk about the new refreshed X6 SUV coming out on September 15th, and as a result, I told you NIO should balance very soon. And that's almost exactly what happened to NIO. NIO also has a buy rating from Deutsche Bank. The price ratio is bouncing as NIO is gaining some relative strength. And even though I do talk about these numbers daily, they don't really matter for tomorrow because it depends on CPI. The shorting on NIO has also decreased as the volume is only 38 million, so things are looking quite good for them. When you look at the chart for NIO, it appears to be in the middle. Not too bad. I just want to mention that on the 4-hour time frame, we have an uptrend that's been respected, right? NIO looks more bullish on the 4-hour. It's trying to push towards 11.14, and the odds do favor that based off technicals. But I can't promise anything because it depends on CPI. If we get a hard CPI is bad, when you see NIO come back down to $10 flat or 9.9. It's a really bad CPI. If CPI is a good number of it's lower than expected. Already went over the scenarios. If you go and take a look, NIO pushing towards 11.4. If we get a good CPI for tomorrow, that's going to be very telling about the overall economy and etc. A good CPI is going to launch SPY towards 448 or higher. We could even push towards 450. If that happens, we could be looking at a very good move upside down. Talking about the current technology, it is still establishing higher highs and higher lows. So it does look a little bit more decent. It's getting very tight right now. You guys, when showing off, it's tight. This is getting ready for that bad move, and we're just going to have to wait and see when it comes out. A bad CPI that's hotter than expected. CPI is very hard, of course, hot. Now, from a technical standpoint, Tesla looks more bearish. It looks like it's going to start sinking towards, I would say, 260 flat or so. If you look at Tesla, you know, even though the odds favor the downside, I'm not going to be too fixated and too worried about that solely. It's still possible for it to bounce unexpectedly. The odds do favor coming down. But I just want to note that it depends on CPI. Of course, that's going to be another big factor. A decent CPI will push Tesla towards 272, at least if we can see a nice 5-point move to the upside. At the very least, Tesla should bounce if we get a good CPI. CPI is a little hot, or there's some kind of bad news for Tesla. It's going to come all the way down to about 260 flat and possibly 255, which is where our 50 happens to be the 50 EMA. My gut is telling me it looks a little bit more bearish, but I just want to be open-minded because it depends on CPI. We had a bearish divergence that developed to date on the RSI. So, you know, the odds do favor more downside. But just to be safe, just to be clear, and just to be honest with everyone, it all depends on CPI. I think that's going to be a bigger factor, so just wait and see on that. For Apple stock, from a technical standpoint, there could be a possible head and shoulders that developed on it, and if we look, Apple gets a rug pulled out from under it. The odds do favor that there is going to likely be downside all the way down to the low 170. If we see a big drop on Apple, it could sink the markets. There's a risk of this, but can I promise that this will happen? The answer is no. I can't promise this. No promises could be made, but the odds do favor downside. Just looking at the current technicals. Okay, why do I say I can't promise anything? Because nothing in the market is guaranteed, and it depends on CPI. Who knows what's going to happen? But this is looking a little bit more bearish. So the odds do favor some more bearish price action on that. You know, there's also like this technically. There's like a slanted head and shoulders, but it's not as clean as Apple's. I think the odds favor a retest of like 370. Maybe it's coming a little bit lower, but I just want to be safe and open-minded. We will see if 368 remains the same or not. But besides that we just want to be open-minded. We want to see what happens if we bounce 378 being retested as possible. If we get a rug pull, 370 to 368 can be tested, and it could start sinking right back down towards like the mid 360. The odds favor downside, but just to be honest, you never know. You want to be open-minded just in case Nvidia's looking more weak in my opinion. When you look at the 4-hour, it's still favoring the bears a bit more. It's continuing to downtrend. It's not getting a nice rebound, and it's looking weak on a daily basis. Now this was a slanted head and shoulders. This could drag Nvidia lower and lower towards this like 425 area. But we're going to see what causes before we make any claims about that. A good CPI could launch this towards 456. A bad CPI is going to cause a rug pull and cause Nvidia to tank towards 440. Nvidia looks more bearish. Looks like the odds favor 440 or less than that. But just to be honest with everyone, I'm always open-minded. I know I keep repeating that, but I'm always going to be open-minded just to be safe. So for NIO, okay, considering all these other factors, even though it's looking a little bit more bullish on a technical standpoint, there's a chance there could be a slight drop to like $10.3 to $10. If we do get a hot CPI, it could be trying to establish could this be like an inverse head and shoulders. There's a possibility of that, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to worry about any patterns for now. We're just going to wait for CPI that's going to determine where it goes. So tomorrow's a big day, and whatever happens with CPI is going to dictate the Fed's policies. All right. So that's what's going to be very important. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stock predictions and market insights. Remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Happy investing, and see you in the next video.